This is Zen'n'ish.
Hi, this is Dr. Kiki, and today we have the pleasure of talking with Miss Laura Kluber. And Laura Kluber is a licensed nutritionist who works with families in the Head Start program located in the District of Columbia. She also owns her own consulting business called Health Ease Nutrition, where she provides private nutrition consults and corporate wellness programs and focuses on making health and nutrition as easy as possible. She is also currently pursuing her PhD in nutrition at Howard University. Welcome, Ms. Kluber. How are you?
Thank you, Dr. Hudson. It's my pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me. I'm doing very well.
Awesome. So today's topic is talking about nutrition during this pandemic time. And I think that, we're so busy trying to just kind of survive and get through this, that sometimes we might be a little remiss in thinking about what we're taking into our bodies and nourishing our bodies as well as our minds and our spirits. So we're very happy that Ms. Kluber is here to talk with us about it. Let's start kind of broad, like when we think about nutrition and what we're eating, and we've heard it many times, but I think it's good to have a refresher. Why is it so important that we think about what we're eating and we're mindful of the types of things that we are putting into our body?
Sure. So it's important to eat healthy because essentially we need to feed our cells in order to function. The saying goes, you are what you eat, for a very valid reason. If you eat solely processed foods, chances are you're not going to feel so great. It may be okay for a few years, but as we age, the diet just isn't sustainable. These processed foods just don't give us enough key vitamins and minerals that we need. And nutrients that we do get, they're going to go towards vital organs, and we'll see changes in the non-essentials like our hair, our skin, and our nails, which are so important to us as well.
Yes. Yes.
And you'll feel more tired. Digestion will be slowed down from lack of fiber. So to feel our best, we have to give our bodies the best fuel that we can get. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons to me to eat healthy.
I agree. And I think about the fact of, like when I start being mindful and taking in more water and trying to eat right, like that's the first thing I notice. Like my skin is clear, my nails are growing, my hair, has more shine to it. So yeah, even if we're looking at the aesthetic reasons why, those are very apparent. But like you said, just taking care of the vital organs inside that we don't necessarily see, but we'll definitely feel the effects later on if we're not taking care of them.
Right.
Yeah. So when we look specifically at what's going on in the world right now with COVID-19, why is it so important that we are keenly aware of what we're eating right now during this pandemic?
So right now, I think one of the most important things is we may not be getting as much exercise as we normally do. We're inside the house much longer. That can put a strain on people. It can cause us to eat way more frequently, more often, or it can even make us eat less, if we're not handling this well. And people may handle this in different ways.
Right.
So it's just important to kind of be aware of your eating patterns during this time. And not just that, it's also important to strengthen our immune system during this time, because God forbid, if we catch the virus, our immune systems will be the one fighting it off. And we need to feed our immune system and give it the right nutrients in order to do that.
Very true. Very true. So what are some things that we want to make sure that we are eating to properly care for our body during this time. And I do understand that, in some cases, people might not have access to some things, but if we do, what are some things that we want to make sure are on our grocery lists at this time?
So the first thing I like to teach is the My Plate method, just to give an idea of what your meals should look like. You want to try to eat as much variety as you can. And I know that's probably, it can be difficult for some people right now, depending on your location, what's available in your grocery stores. So good options would include, you can do frozen fruits and vegetables and things like that. But I'll just go a little bit into the My Plate method, just so that everyone can kind of get a general idea of what a healthy meal should look like. So I know it can be difficult, but really you want to try to make half of your plate vegetables and fruit. And the majority of it should be vegetables since it's lower in sugar. A quarter of your plate should be whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, or barley. And the other quarter of your plate should be a good lean protein like fish, chicken, or a plant-based protein like tofu or beans. And you want to make sure you're getting in calcium by eating low-fat dairy, such as organic yogurt with no sugar added, because milk already has a ton of natural sugars in it. Or you can do a plant-based milk to get your calcium. So that's just like what I like to teach as a foundation, so that, because My Plate, it's just a really good teaching guide, as it uses a standard 9-inch plate. So then breaking down your plate into those components can really help you with each meal, just kind of get an idea of what you should be eating.
Yes. And you actually touched on what I was going to ask, like for our people who are maybe vegetarian and or vegan, they can still get the nutrients that they need.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So you don't necessarily have to eat meat to get your iron. There's great iron sources in leafy greens, even in chocolate, fortified grains. And actually a really good tip is using cast iron skillets to cook. And that fortifies your food just through cooking. So that's a really great way for vegetarians especially.
So that's not a myth.
Yeah, no, it's not a myth. You can actually, there's studies out there that show it does enrich your food with iron.
Cool. So just so we can get a better idea of it, like what would be like a typical day of eating that would nourish our bodies and help our immune system during this time?
Sure. So a typical day of meals, we can start with breakfast. So for breakfast, a good option may be a smoothie, and you could sneak in some greens in there, a protein powder. I like to do a frozen banana to give it some sweetness. I actually don't add any sweetener at all, because usually the frozen fruits have enough sweetness in it. And then you could also do other things if you're not a smoothie person, like maybe whole grain cereal with fruit. And with the milk options, doing low fat milk or even a plant-based milk is great. You could do low fat Greek yogurt. There's even the plant-based yogurts that are really good. And you could top that with whole grain granola and berries. That's one of my favorites. Another good option is doing an egg skillet, and you could throw in some vegetables in there. For lunch and dinner, some great options include having brown rice or whole wheat pasta with grilled fish, chicken. I like to do black bean burgers, or even a simple bean stir fry, adding tomato, bell pepper, onion, and spices, and kind of doing like a bean burrito bowl type thing. And you can even take simple dishes like the grilled proteins I mentioned, and just changing up the sauces, spices, and herbs. So you can kind of change things up and not get too bored, of the same things. Because I know a lot of people like to buy their foods in bulk. So just changing up the spices and the way you season it can even be, it can just give you variety.
You're right. It can be a game changer.
Oh,
So,
I forgot dessert, the most important
yes.
part. So I like to do fresh sliced fruit for dessert.
Mhm.
That's good for vitamin C, which we really need right now. And you can top it with some yogurt, or you could melt some chocolate, some dark chocolate chips, and do like a dip. That's a really fun and healthy dessert option that's low in calories.
And it
So
sounds really yummy.
yeah.
So, and the things that you have mentioned, they are like simple meals. Like it doesn't sound like a whole lot of meal prep or going out of your way to get the ingredients. These are things that, if your supermarket at this time is stocked as it usually is, or even like not as stocked as it usually is, these are things that you can probably find.
Right. And, the grocery store being stocked, that's a good point that you mentioned, because people may not be able to get items right now. And so one thing that I'm sharing with everyone is maybe ordering meal kits, because then
Mm,
you're supporting your local businesses. There's a ton of discounts out there right now, and you don't have to plan ahead really to plan your meals. So
right.
that's another great option to try to look into. It sends you all the things you need for your meal
Mm,
and the instructions as well. And it can be a great activity you can do with the whole family.
yes, that is true. So I know that we hear a lot of, or a buzzword is superfoods. Like, are there any superfoods that might be particularly beneficial during this time with COVID?
So really when I think of superfoods, I think of the rainbow and just
Mhm.
and colorful fruits and vegetables. And I think that's one of the most important things we can get right now,
Mm,
because just America in general, we just tend to lack getting in enough vegetables, especially. So just trying to get in more colorful fruits and vegetables, I think, is key.
mm,
Um, and you can do that by doing frozen fruits and vegetables as well, as I mentioned before.
mm.
Spinach and kale are great sources for fiber, calcium, iron, and you can throw those in smoothies or soups or stir fries really easily.
Yeah.
Um, you really just like want to get as much colorful stuff as you can, because they're full of antioxidants
Mm,
that can fight free radicals in the body and prevent cell damage. That's what we need right now.
yeah. And I am a fan of sneaking them into the smoothie because you don't really taste.
Yeah, that's the best way. That's my favorite way.
Yes, that is. So when we look at all of this and we've talked about eating, let's talk just a moment about water. Like, how important is water intake?
Oh, so important, especially if you're increasing your fiber intake. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because as you increase fiber, you do need to increase your water intake. And they say a good rule of thumb is to have 8 ounce cups per day. So that's 64 ounces total.
Hmm.
We need to make sure that we do that. So as we're increasing the fiber, we need to stay hydrated to prevent digestive issues that we could face, like constipation or other things. A great way to get in more water, there's bottles out there with like little tick marks for each time, for each hour,
Yeah.
and you just have to fill up your bottle once per day, and it'll equal the amount of 64 ounces. So that's one thing that's been working for me to get in more water. It's a good reminder.
Yeah. And I've even seen through social media, people have kind of made their own, like, made
Oh yeah.
comments. Um, so there's definitely fun ways to get it in, but like you said, it's really important to get your water in.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Now, I was wondering if, like, because I know you take excellent care of, you have a dog named Zeus. And um, do you have any tips? Are you changing his diet any, or are you doing anything different with him during this pandemic?
So he's been getting out a lot more. So I've been just trying to make sure that he's also getting a lot of snacks. We are hiking a lot more,
Mm,
and he's 10 years old, so he needs the energy to fuel him, you know?
right.
So I have been giving him a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables as well. He loves bell pepper just slices.
Mm,
He just eats those up like candy. So really what's good for us is good for them, minus a few things like chocolate. And I just feel like maybe look up the food first online before you
yeah,
give it to your dog. But for the most part, most vegetables are really good for them. And it's good for them to get more fiber as well.
cool. I know Max loves carrots. Like he eats them like they're the best thing ever. Okay, so you mentioned exercise before, and even when we were talking about hiking with Zeus. Do you have any tips for us for exercising during this time?
Yes. So one thing, well, we may be getting less exercise than we normally do, or we could be getting in more depending on the person. So you want to try to match your energy intake with your energy output. And a
Mm,
great way to do this is by tracking your food intake through an app like Chronometer, which is my favorite, or MyFitnessPal.
mm,
So it lets you set the amount of calories you should be having depending on your needs, whether
mhm,
you're trying to gain, lose, or maintain weight. And it also gives you a breakdown of your nutrient intake, which is really great because it'll tell you if you're not getting certain nutrients like calcium or iron. So it's just a really great tool to use during this time, especially when we need more or we may need more accountability for the foods we're eating. Like, and that ties in with like what we were talking about before with mindful eating and just being more aware, you know.
mhm.
Um, and then with the exercise, I've noticed a lot of companies like Core Power Yoga, Power Fitness, I think it's called, they're all coming up with free trials.
Mm,
So I think it's good to see what interests you as far as physical activity and to see if there's any trials out there right now
yeah.
for home workout sessions and things like that.
Definitely. I know that I enjoy doing Leslie Sansone like walk at home, and there's so many even videos on YouTube for
Yeah.
yeah. So that is great. And when you talk about like, the fact that some of us might be getting in more or less, and we're talking about exercise videos, and a lot of what we're doing is in a limited space outside or we're doing it inside. And we're spending so much time inside, during this time. Are there things that we can do to kind of enhance our environment to help us during this time?
Yes, definitely. So we can actually change our environment to support healthy eating. So not necessarily avoiding so-called bad foods, but if you notice, there's certain foods that you tend to be eating more of that may not be as healthy for you. Um, you can you don't necessarily have to rid these items, but you can change your environment in a way to have them less accessible and to have more healthy foods that you'd like to eat more of, more accessible and readily available. So like the first thing you open in your fridge, have those foods there.
Mm,
The foods you're trying to limit, you could put those in the back of your pantry, stuff that you're not seeing every day, so that it just kind of makes you think twice about it.
mm,
And so it reinforces your goals that you set for yourself, basically.
well, that's a good idea. And it is a time where, I know I'm checking the pantry a little more than I usually do because I'm here
Yeah,
all day.
I'm definitely guilty of that. Yeah.
Do you have any tips for kind of avoiding or being mindful that we could overeat during this time because we're here in the home with our food a lot more than usual?
Yeah, definitely. So the apps, Chronometer and MyFitnessPal, definitely help with tracking your intake. And then also, if you notice yourself snacking more in certain foods that tend to be more high calorie, doing food swaps can also be really good. So still getting the taste of things that you enjoy, but just coming up with like healthier alternatives to them can be really great. One really good one that I like to share with people is a good chocolate swap, because my weakness right now is definitely chocolate.
That's always
and,
a weakness.
and chocolate is an amazing food. It's filled with antioxidants, but of course, over indulging in chocolate is not good because it does have a lot of fat. So we want to limit that, but we can still have more chocolate and cut back on the fat if we do healthier options. Like chocolate hummus is a really good one. I can give you the recipe as well to send out, but it is amazing and it's very easy to make. And I've also seen it in the stores a lot more recently now. I saw it for only $2 at Walmart. So that's a really good chocolate alternative. And then there's other things that are great too, like instead of doing fried chips, finding baked versions of those things and low sodium stuff. So there's always a healthy alternative to the foods that we enjoy. And it kind of helps us still enjoy the foods without totally removing them from our lives,
Right. And with, internet, it's only a click away to find many of the swaps that are available.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And you did talk about, or I know that you do have some handouts that you will be sharing. So if any of the listeners would like that information, feel free to email me and I will get that information out to you.
Sounds great.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today, Ms. Kluber. This has been very informative. And it's like simple things that we can do to help boost our immune system and to take care of our body, not only in this time with the pandemic, but for lifelong life in our years. So I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed discussing about it.
Awesome. If you would like any of the great handouts mentioned in this podcast, please contact Dr. Kiki at connections@zen'n'ish.org. That's connections at zen'nish.org.
Zen'n'ish copyrighted podcast and website represent the opinions of Dr. Lakeisha Hudson, Dr. Kiki, Zen'n'ish Incorporated, and/or her guests. The content here should not be taken as medical, psychological, or any other advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical, mental, or health concerns. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are Dr. Hudson's and/or her guests and do not represent that of their places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. All people and places mentioned in the podcast are mentioned to protect the confidentiality. This podcast or website should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever. No guarantees given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made in the podcast or website. Nobody is listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you